With the 2025 NFL season upon us, just a couple of months away, I'm going to take a look at 10 coaches on the hot seat heading into 2025. Now, all these may not enter the season on the hot seat, but I think there's a scenario where they could be out after this season. My name is Harrison Graham. This is For Verts. We'll dive into that here on today's show. I want to hear from you guys first, though. Name a head coach that you think will get fired mid-season. Like last year, we saw Matt Eberflus get fired mid-season. He might have been the only one last year. I can't remember. There might have been a couple others. But I want to hear from you. If you had to take a guess, who do you think a coach is that could get fired in the middle of the year? Okay, we'll go from 10 to 1, least likely to most likely in terms of hot seat rankings. I'll put Mike Tomlin at 10. I don't think the Steelers would ever fire him. But let's say this Aaron Rodgers thing just doesn't work. They finished below 500 for the first time in the Tomlin era. I could see like a mutual parting of ways where they agree to part ways and they trade him for like a middle round pick, right? And they say, hey, we appreciate the almost 2 decades. We'll trade you to one of 5 teams that would love to have you, because Mike Tomlin would be hired in an instant. He's under contract, so the Steelers could get something for him. I don't know if they'd get like a first-round pick, Sean Payton style. That was a different situation. But I do think that could be a possibility. Obviously, if they make the playoffs, they're not going to pivot off of him. I mean, they easily could have last year, and they chose to not. But if this is the year it finally goes south, maybe it would be time to part ways. Okay, number 9. I'll go Raheem Morris. I think that Atlanta underachieved in a lot of ways last year. Now, things got weird after they signed Cousins. They draft Penix, and early on, things were looking pretty good. They swept Tampa Bay, who's obviously kind of been the team to beat in that division the last few years. But if they underachieve again, like let's say they go like 7-10, it wouldn't completely shock me if they pulled the plug on this. Now, I'm not advocating for that. I think you got to give coaches in most situations at least 3 years. And it's not like last year was a disaster by any means. They went 8-9, but everyone and their dog picked Atlanta to win the division, and they really weren't that close despite sweeping the team that did win the division. So I think they got to at least look like a team that can compete for a wild card spot for Morris to be, super safe heading into year 3. Jonathan Gannon, who is in year 3 with the Cardinals. The reason I have him lower, I don't think it's scorching hot by any means, is I think in some ways he's kind of overachieved. That first year he got there, most people thought they were going to be in contention for the number 1 pick. I think they ended up with like the 6th worst record, so they overachieved that year. Last year, they were a couple, bounces away from maybe being a wild card team. They were pretty competitive throughout the season, lost a few close games. I think this year, honestly, is a bigger year for Kyler Murray than it is for Jonathan Gannon. Remember, neither Gannon or the GM Austin Fort were involved in getting and paying Kyler Murray. But, if things got weird and it fell off the wagon this year, I could certainly see a pivot. But I think he's mostly safe, but a name to keep an eye on. Brian Schottenheimer with the Dallas Cowboys. And I know you're going to say, first-year head coach, Jerry's not going to do that after 1 year. Well, the only reason I could see it being a possibility is, what if it's just a disaster? What if we're 7 weeks in and we're like, this guy's just not a head coach? I mean, they promoted him. They didn't want to do a real search for whatever reason. And what if people around Jerry are just like, this isn't going to work, and we have to do a real search, and let's just get out ahead of this. So I do think that's on the board. Now, I think Dallas is talented enough where it probably won't get to a point where it's that bad. I think they will be a team that's at least hovering around 500. But I do think the nuclear option is they're like 2-7, and Jerry is like, okay, I made a mistake here. I'm in my 80s now. I want to win another Super Bowl, and I'm going to go ahead and take the L here and admit that mistake and move on. Zac Taylor at number 6. I think he's a decent coach. I mean, he obviously got to a Super Bowl, but they've missed the playoffs the last couple of years. They start slow every single year. At some point, it's like, that's got to be on the head coach a little bit to not come out of the gates last year. I mean, last year, if they just beat the Patriots and Gerard Mayo into week 1, who got fired, by the way, he was one and done, they make the playoffs. They couldn't beat New England in week 1 against Jacoby Brissett. If they miss the playoffs this year, I think you have to pivot. I think it's time for a change. Joe Brady's still out there. Burrow's OC at LSU, who's the OC with the Bills. That would be kind of a natural fit, I would think. If Buffalo has another big year, I think Joe Brady will be firmly in the mix to get a job. So I think it's playoffs or bust for Zac Taylor. Okay, we will get to the top 5 here in just a moment, but subscribe to the channel. We got content all off season long. Training camps will be here in less than a month, so we'll be able to, break down some on-the-field action as well, which will be fantastic. And until then, we'll continue to pump out content. So subscribe, turn on notifications, and support the show. I would greatly appreciate it. Okay, top 5 of my hot seat rankings for 2025. Kevin Stefanski, I personally think he's a really good coach, and I wouldn't have him number this high, but I just think that this thing, I think it could be one of those where, he just wants out, and he's just like, you know what, let's just part ways here. Maybe he just asks out, and they mutually just agree to let that thing go. I mean, he's taken the Browns to the playoffs twice. He won a playoff game with Baker Mayfield, got there again with Joe Flacco. I just don't see this thing going well this year. So if they win 3 or 4 games, they might just all agree to kind of move in a new direction. So if I'm Stefanski, that's kind of what I would want, because I think he's shown enough where he'll get another chance somewhere else. He may have to take a year off or go be an OC for a year, but the Browns situation with that ownership, it's too much ownership involvement. Okay, number 4, Brian Callahan, the Titans head coach. They obviously just drafted Cam Ward, so conventional wisdom would say, okay, give the offensive-minded head coach multiple years with him. But there were whispers when they changed GMs this past offseason that they considered a change at head coach too. And look, it gets weird when you hire one of the GM or the coach, or fire one of the GM or coach, and then you fill in the other position, because most GMs, most coaches, they want to be aligned with their counterpart. And when that doesn't happen initially, more often than not, that leads to some kind of change down the road, unless they just absolutely hit it off and are winning right away. Now, I think Tennessee's in a decent spot. Their defense is solid. They play in an easy division, so I think Callahan's got an opportunity here. But if they're another 5 or 6 win team, I could see them going in a different direction. Top 3 here, Shane Steichen at number 3. I like Shane Steichen. I know what he brings to the table as an offensive mind and offensive coordinator, but he was tasked with developing Anthony Richardson. That hasn't worked out. Now, to me, that's on Anthony Richardson more so than anything else, and that's on Chris Ballard, the GM, who has had numerous swings at quarterbacks since Andrew Luck. But with Jim Irsay's passing, if the Colts have a bad year, you just kind of wonder, would they just fully reset? You see this sometimes in sports when the owner, sells or passes away or whatever the case may be, and the new people in charge, whether it's family or other people, they just they want to leave their mark, right? They want to say, all right, this is the call I'm making. I'm going in this direction. So I could see if they're like a 5-win team and there's this kind of domino back and forth of Richardson and Daniel Jones, I wouldn't blame the Colts at all for kind of just pulling the plug on Chris Ballard as the GM, Shane Steichen as the head coach, and just doing a complete reset. Brian Daboll at number 2, kind of like Brian Callahan. I think when you let your coach, especially an offensive-minded coach, draft a quarterback in the first round, you should give that at least 2 years, especially when that quarterback's not going to start right away, because they're going to start Russell Wilson, try to be competitive, and not force Jackson Dart into action. But does John Mara have the patience? When he decided to bring Joe Shane and Brian Daboll back, the initial thought was, okay, he's going to give this a couple of years with the new young quarterback. But then an hour later, after they announced they're returning, he was asked, how soon do these guys need to start winning? And he said, very soon. My patience is wearing thin. So John Mara has been a guy who's fired coaches after 2 years on numerous occasions. This will be year, 4 for Brian Daboll. If it doesn't go well this year, they may not be patient and wait it out to develop Jackson Dart, which also would leave Jackson Dart's future in doubt, because if they're really bad and picking high in the draft next year, the new regime might just draft the quarterback. So that thing could get weird. As long as it's not a disaster, I would probably give Daboll 2026 as well. But some of these owners, man, they're pretty impatient. And then lastly, Mike McDaniel. I think you could have justified a change last year, but they kind of rallied late in the year, played better when Tua got back. But I'm selling this Miami team, man. They're way too Tua dependent, and I know most people are like, well, all teams are dependent on their franchise quarterback. Sure, but Tua is not an elite quarterback. He's a good quarterback, and they're functional with him. Without him, they can't function at all. And I think part of that's got to be on McDaniel. The disciplinary stuff has been a problem. He flat out admitted last year that they tried finding players who would show up late to practice, and it didn't change anything. It's like, one, that tells me they don't respect you, and two, maybe you shouldn't admit that out loud. Like that's not a great look. So he kind of just feels like one of those guys that's more of a coordinator than a head coach. Obviously, they've had some success there. If they're not at least competing for a playoff spot, I would guess that he's someone that could be fired potentially during the season. Okay, which coach enters 2025 on the hottest seat? Like, who is heading into this year and you're like, man, that guy's really got to win or he's in major trouble? Let us know down in the comment section below. My name is Harrison Graham. Appreciate you guys for tuning in to today's episode of For Verts. We'll be back very soon, so don't forget to subscribe to the channel.